Thanks, Rob. And thank you, Kyle. Kyle, can I ask you a question? What is, if you got a pretty decent HELOC going, what would the interest rate on that HELOC be today? 4.45. 4.45. Okay. I'm going to use that number, and let's keep it in mind over the course of our presentation. So we've talked about the markets, we've talked about the city, we've talked about identifying a market that makes sense to get into at the right part of the market cycle, and we've had one of the best in the business tell us about mortgages. So let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about some deals. Now, everybody has a folder. In the folder, we sprinkled a couple of deals. We don't have every single deal that we're going to talk about today in the folder. So we just kind of went with the variety pack method. You just get what you get in the folder. But we are going to send everybody an email with every single property that we're about to talk about. So you're going to get everything. So don't worry about taking photos of the slide deck while we go, unless you really, really love the slide deck. Just listen. Think about what's available in Edmonton. We're going to do a couple of different styles of deal, a couple of different styles of investing, and you're going to get all the pro formas anyways. Now, the cool thing about the pro formas that you do have is it just gives you an idea of how we're looking at deals in Edmonton right now. So again, let me remind you of the Alberta advantage. No taxes. Well, not no taxes, but none of the inconvenient taxes that make doing business in BC just a little bit trickier. The other thing that we've got is the landlord advantage. So this is a really cool feature at Edmonton as well. There is no rental raise restriction. As you can raise your rent by as much as you want, as much as the market will bear once per year. So I understand that there's talk of actually rolling back the rental increase in BC this year. That sucks. But in Alberta, once the market starts humming along, if a 10% rental increase is justified by the market, we get a 10% rental increase. The other thing about Alberta that I really like, that I have taken advantage of, is that if your tenant doesn't pay on the first, you can have a hearing filed on the second, and you can be pulling them out by the scruff of the neck with a bailiff by about the 25th, 26th. So again, your property is a little bit more insulated from what I like to call tenant risk. Now, of course, having the right property manager on your power team mitigates this risk, but it's nice to know that if you get a bad apple, you can take that bad apple and toss them a lot quicker than you can in pretty much any other market in Canada. We also have legislation that says if you don't want pets, you don't have to have pets. I know in Ontario that kind of is sometimes an issue. And there's also a lot of lease options that you can build into your lease that, again, sway the deal in your favor. So even just being a landlord in Edmonton is a heck of a lot nicer than being a landlord in most other places in Canada. Now, again, Edmonton is all about that cash flow. So all of the deals we're going to look at are going to feature really great cash flows, and then I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of the deal over and above the great cash flow that it provides. So this is how our pro formas are set up. So I'm going to draw your attention to some of the key features, just so that when you get them on our newsletter, when you are looking at pro formas, when you've got them in your sheets, you kind of know what to look for. So number one, up in here we have the down payment that you're going to have to put into the deal. Right here, we've got property management at 10%, vacancy allowance at 5%. If you would like that to go up or down depending on the vacancy rate of the neighborhood, because again, Edmonton's average is about that 6 right now. We put in 5 because there are some neighborhoods that are closer to 0 to 1. There are some neighborhoods that are closer to 10% vacancy. Edmonton's a big city, and market to market it varies. And then repairs allowance for repairs and maintenance. With newer properties, we're going to dial that lower. With older properties, we might dial it a little bit higher. But again, we put this in here because it is important when you're actually budgeting for your property. At the bottom, we have our total cash flow, and then the yield that we have is your annual cash flow compared to your investment of a down payment. That's the percentage calculation. We also do a 5-year projection. We assume a 3.5% market growth and a 3.5% rental inflation as an average, which gives you your total gain, which is an addition of market appreciation, mortgage pay down, and cumulative cash flow for a 5-year period. Your ROI compares that number to your down payment, and then we annualize it over a 5-year period. So those are just some of the key numbers. Like if you want to look at it at a glance and say, how's this one going to perform? Those are the key indicators that you're going to see on the pro forma. Now, buying a property is all about balancing your priorities. There's no property that's going to have it all. Like I said, when you're looking in the Alberta Avenue area, you're going to have really high cash flow, but you're also going to have a slightly lower income demographic. You're going to have longer tenancy periods, but your tenant screening is going to take you a little bit longer to find the right tenant. Flip it over to one of the new subdivisions like Windermere. You're going to have newer, you're going to have more affluent, you're going to have nicer, but because of those things, the properties are more expensive and your cash flow goes down as a result. Everything's a balancing act. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of these properties as we pick through them. So, deal number one. This is an example of an older suited house in Edmonton. Now, I'm going over like the really, really juicy highlights. We got price, down payment, monthly cash flow, cash on cash yield, projected return on investment. Those are the good numbers. Now, the thing about Edmonton is that we are a city that is extremely, extremely friendly for legal basement suites. Why are legal basement suites important? Well, when you're going to apply for your mortgage, if the suite is legal, now the bank's going to take that rental income into consideration. So when we've got an older suited house in Edmonton for $300,000, that'll buy you what, a parking spot here in Vancouver? So we've got a $300,000 house, down payment's just under $60,000. The monthly cash flow is $682 a month. The basement's already tenanted. The other rent that we pulled for the pro forma was from the tenant that just moved out. It's a cash on cash yield of 13%. So again, if our line of credit, what did we say it was, Kyle? 4.5% for a HELOC? So 13.64 minus 4.5 equals cash in your pocket every month after paying for that line of credit. That's what we're talking about in Edmonton. And with that cash flow buffer, you now are in a borrowing position to get the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Just like Kyle said, it sets you up for progressive portfolio growth using cash flow. So the advantages of this property, great cash flow, long-term tenant profile. The cons of this property, slightly lower income area, so you're going to have a longer vacancy period. But once you find the right tenant, they're going to stay for a really long time because a lower income tenant profile doesn't have that upward mobility. They're not saving up for a down payment. Next, deal profile. A new property, non-strata townhouse. So the thing about strata fees is you pay them, but that comes out of your cash flow. So in Edmonton, we've got these really cool properties that are row houses, which saves on construction costs, which saves you on purchase price, but there are no strata fees. So it keeps the cost down, but the tenants still pay the same amount as they would if it was strata title. From the tenant's perspective, it makes no difference. So we collect a really healthy rent. We're getting $176 a month in cash flow, a little bit of a lower yield, that's 3%. So remember, like I said, the pro is it's brand new. It's shiny, it's sparkly, it's fresh out of the wrapper. You're going to get a tenant profile that appreciates those sort of things. You have a warranty, but because you're in a more expensive suburb, your yield goes down a little bit. So we actually have a client in this room tonight who has just recently purchased one of these. I should have asked people if I could point them out, but yeah, well, Luke, give us a wave. So Luke just got one of these in Southwest Edmonton. Beautiful community. So I'll ask permission for shout-outs, and if you're okay with a shout-out, wave your hand and let people come ask you questions at the networking break afterwards. Okay, moving on. Deal profile. Older suited duplex. Now, before I talk about this older suited duplex, I want to talk about a big, and I say big, I mean huge, earth-shattering change that just happened in Edmonton. We passed a bylaw, an amendment to bylaw 12800. Doesn't matter what the bylaw is, I know the number. What this bylaw is allowing is legal suites in semi-detached housing. So, basement suites in houses, pretty common across Canada, very, very friendly in Edmonton. Basement suites in a two-title side-by-side attached duplex, very rare. And the fact that we're allowing this in Edmonton is going to skyrocket cash flow in the city. Because now you basically have a legal fourplex, but you don't have to have 4 services. You can do 2 services because it's a secondary suite. That keeps the price point down. But again, from the tenant's perspective, a duplex looks like a fourplex. The rent is going to stay the same. It's going to be a higher rent, which is going to result in a higher cash flow. So this beauty right here has illegal suites in the basement that now can be legalized. That legal suite rent and revenue now goes towards your mortgage consideration. As you can see, older, but looking good. Nice renovations. It's in a B+ area of town. It's in that north side, steady Eddie kind of area. Walking distance to a school, close to a transportation corridor for job perspectives. Because it is older, repairs and maintenance will be a part of the gig. Monthly cash flow on this bad boy, $13.69 per month. Now, the bad news is this one's already sold, and the fellow that bought it's in the room. So, no wave? Okay, no shout out. Oh yeah, there we go. There's Greg with the shout out for this one. Yeah. He's actually a realtor here in the Lower Mainland too, so Greg's one heck of a guy, and I'm sure he'll tell you the story of this kick-butt property. Now, the cool thing about Edmonton is there's a lot of these. So Shelly gave us a wave in the back. She's looking at one of these as well. And if Chris, give us a wave if you're comfortable telling your story. Oh, there's one more over here. Okay. So my point is, people love cash flow, obviously. 14% is pretty juicy when you think about it being in a major urban center like Edmonton, Alberta. That's a lot of cash flow pound for pound compared to the purchase price. We are selling a lot of these, and we're out there bird dogging them. And what I mean by that is we're trying to find ones that are off market because there is a lot of demand for them. Very, very popular investment in Edmonton right now. Deal profile. Older multifamily. So how many of you here are more interested in multifamily investing? Yeah, you are. Me too. I have quite a few apartment buildings of my own. Why multifamily in Edmonton is so interesting and exciting is that we know that the value of a multifamily building is directly tied to the net operating income. The net operating income is directly tied to the rent. And what is part of the Alberta advantage? No rental restrictions. So when the market turns, we can juice those rents right up and create huge value by jacking up the net operating income. So this one right now, this is a very interesting deal to me because locationally, it's a short walk from NAIT, which is a Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, like BCIT. It's about 3 blocks from an LRT. It's full of really great tenants. It's in medium condition, which gives you the opportunity to renovate it into great condition. And right now, the vendor is in a position where they're equity heavy and they're willing to look at a vendor takeback. So a slightly more advanced deal, but if you're a more advanced investor, it's worth having a conversation about. So right now, the NOI is at just under $120,000. The cap rate at list price is 5.43. There's 21 units, so the per door cost is very low, and the rents are low. The vendor on this one has basically said, look, we know that the market's been tough. We looked at the stats in one of the earlier presentations. He said, you know what? I'm not in a rush to keep these rents, and I'd rather have no vacancies. So the rents are in a position where, in my opinion, they could be raised as soon as the spring market hits. And the vendor preparing for sale has kept a lot of the tenants on month to month because they know that the new owner is going to want to juice the rents up. So if you're a multifamily kind of person, this is a really good looking multifamily kind of deal. What do we have next? Deal profile, locational land play. This is an interesting deal for those of you who are not so much into cash flow and just want a great piece of land in a great location. So we sell quite a few of these too. In Edmonton, it's very popular. So this is a aerial view of the lot. To take a 50-foot by 100-foot wide lot, we can divide those into 2 lots at 25 width per piece by 150 deep. That adds value to the property, and now you can build 2 houses on it. The cool thing is, in that West End district, like we've been talking about, there are houses like this galore. So it's a sleepy old bungalow. It'll be cute. It'll be dated. It'll rent well. It won't rent astronomically, but your repairs and maintenance is going to go down because the game plan is you're sitting on the land to tear it down eventually, so you can kind of just let the property sail off into the sunset. And so you see the cash flow isn't super high, but this is also me putting in conservative winter rents. But the ROI is higher because being on that LRT corridor, we're going to see higher than average market appreciation. So again, if you want a nice little starter property and you're interested in a really good land play, well, this could be the type of deal for you. So again, the pros, great land appreciation. The cons, cash flow isn't great, but in this type of a deal, that's not really the point. Now, I know that you Vancouverites love your pre-sales. And I don't blame you. In the past few years, you guys have done incredibly well on condo pre-sales. I'd be pretty excited if I had done well in a condo pre-sale too, and so you should be. But that begs the question, what is the market in Edmonton like for condo pre-sales? Does it make sense in Edmonton in the same way that it makes sense in Vancouver? Well, condo pre-sales are predicated on it being a very hot, very aggressively growing market, because you want to buy it at today's price, knowing that in a very short period of time, tomorrow's price is going to be substantially higher. That's not exactly what's happening in Edmonton right now. We're in a steadily, creepily along growing market, but the question I have is, again, we know cash flow is king. We even saw a crown on a pile of cash in Kyle's presentation. It's very important right now, not only in the Edmonton market, but in the Canadian market. Cash flow matters. And if you have rolled the dice on your pre-sale and speculated, and it doesn't come up the way that you wanted, and you have to hold that condo in Edmonton, well, guess what? The condo fees in these big, beautiful towers are high. The price per square foot is high. The price of owning that condo is very high, but the rent on a condo in Edmonton is relatively low. So if you're going to play the pre-sale game in Edmonton, you need to know that you're exposing yourself to the risk of owning a property that isn't going to spike in value, that you're going to have to hold and feed. And if you're feeding a property with negative cash flow, well, you need to have an astronomically high income to get approved for the next property. Otherwise, it's going to halt your portfolio growth until you can do something about the negative cash flow you're going to get. On top of that, Edmonton is experiencing a condo oversupply right now. So you can buy a condo for cheap in Edmonton relative to single family. But again, the condo fees and the lower rents in condos are negatively impacting the cash flow. So if we're keeping cash flow in mind, Edmonton isn't a great time for pre-sale condos, because if the market doesn't spike during that year or so that you're doing a condo pre-sale, you're going to be stuck with assets that are really going to hamper your portfolio growth over the next 3 to 5 years. So it's risky. And I think there's, as we've already seen with some of the options, there's better ways to make money. But here's the thing. All we've talked about so far are older properties with higher cash flow, with the exception of that one townhouse. But here's the thing. Some of us want that newness. We want lower headache, lower maintenance. We don't want as much. We want a tenant profile that's a little more affluent. We want something that has very little deferred maintenance over the next few years. So instead of Edmonton pre-sale condos, there is a very, very good case for pre-built single-family product. Edmonton pre-builts are the way to go. So this is just an image of a house under construction. And there are pre-built options that achieve two things. Number one, they allow you to pay today's price, hoping that tomorrow the price is going to be higher, to fulfill that, that classic Vancouver pre-sale itch. But secondly, and most importantly, it protects your downside. So if we don't get that zing in the market while you're building it, and now you have to hold it for a little while, well, guess what? We're still going to cash flow very nicely. So I'm going to go through 3 pre-build options that make a lot of sense right now in the Edmonton market. Pre-build option number 1 is a refurbishment option. So in Edmonton, it's very popular to take bungalows that are in like the 40, 45-year-old range, gut them, strip them down to the foundation, strip them down to the studs, open up the attic, replace the shingles, replace the windows, do it top to bottom. Make it basically like a brand new house. You can kind of see, yeah, it's older, but all the things have been done. Brand new kitchen, new concrete work in the back. These houses are in about the 475 range. There are a lot of them in different locations around the city. The ones that we get most excited about are within walking distance of an LRT. We've actually got this one available in Millwoods right now, 200 yards away from, meters away from where the rural Alberta talk right there. 200 meters away from where the LRT is going to open up, that stop. So again, you're getting what is a very respectable cash flow. $400 a month, 5.62% yield. You're still outperforming your HELOC. And like I said, you get the best of both worlds with these refurbished bungalows, because you get the location, because the LRT is going through gentrified and older neighborhoods. It's not going right to the heart of brand new suburbs. So you get the advantage of LRT access, but you also get that newness of fully refurbished and renovated. So we sell a lot of these too. In addition to those suite duplexes, we probably get 2 to 3 of these per month because they're a very popular option. Again, if you want to kind of have that in the middle, balance, a little bit of everything type of investment, really, really great option. But if refurbished just isn't good enough and you want to go full new, well, we are purpose building brand new basement suited houses in Edmonton right now. These are more in that Henday West, Henday South, even in some of the bedroom communities, for those of you that know Edmonton, like Leduc. These are houses that are purpose-built, thought out, investor-friendly, designed specifically to be excellent rental properties. So when we so this one that we've got a line in with this builder. They're out in the West End, and while it's not walking distance to where the LRT is planned, it is conveniently close to the park and ride. So again, that's going to open up that part of the city to people who need to commute downtown using the train. Our cash flow is still really great, $517 a month for a 6% yield. So we get the new factor, we get a good location, and we get a purpose-built rental. The cool thing about, so I'm just going to go off on a quick side note here. The reason that purpose-built pre-builds are a really nice thing over and above the potential for value add is that Edmonton is seasonally affected by the winter just being cold and crappy. And the thing people don't want to do in the winter is move if they don't have to. So from about late November till about early March, tenants don't tend to do as much moving, and it's a tricky time to fill a vacancy. Is it impossible? No. I just filled a vacancy yesterday. But oftentimes they'll have to offer a little bit of a seasonal rental incentive to fill a vacancy in the winter. The easiest way to mitigate that is you just put somebody on a 4 to 6 month lease and then renew the lease, in that May, June time period, so you have people on a summer cycle. Anyways, the point of my story is that timing is great for a pre-built right now because you can order up a pre-built right now and then have it ready in the spring just in time for the optimal renting season. The next new property that we're excited about is our infamous, wonderful basement suite duplex. So this is one, we actually, after the last YEG Under the Microscope, we sold 3 of these the next week. This was a property that seemed to really resonate with people. And it's not hard to see why. They're brand new, they're beautiful, they're sparkly, and they're in one of the most affluent new communities in town. So we're talking a very high-end professional tenant profile. The numbers look spectacular. $1,000 a month in cash flow, almost a 7% yield for something that is brand spanking new. So 2 of the 3 people actually use a line of credit to purchase these products. They cash flow great, and again, they order them up on pre-build, so they avoid the winter season. These ones are going to be ready in May, June, which again is prime time for renting. The other cool part about pre-builds in Edmonton is that all of the builders we work with, we've schmoozed, we've worked with, we've created a system where you can use their show home as the show suite to fill your vacancies. So the whole time this sucker is being built, you're showing it to tenants the entire way through. And most of the time with our pre-builds, we find that tenants are ready to move in right at key release so that you're not exposing yourself to a couple of months of vacancy and carrying cost while you're waiting for your property to kind of get finished up. So that's a summary of the kinds of deals that we're working on in Edmonton right now. So like I said, I'm just going to rewind a little bit here to do a quick summary. So we've got the older style properties. They're going to cash flow a lot. They're going to be a better price point. The newer properties cash flow a little bit less. We've gone over the pros and cons. Suite duplexes in Edmonton just got really exciting because they're legal, which means that cash flow now counts in the eyes of the lender. Excellent opportunity and market for multifamily because with it being a rental slumping market, we know that there's a horizon for increasing those rents and increasing that NOI. Pre-sales, condos, not so much. There's an oversupply. They're not going to cash flow. If you time it wrong, you're going to be bleeding all over the place. Pre-builds, really good time because if you don't hit it right, if you don't spin the roulette wheel and hit a market tick up, then at least you can rent it for really good, $400 a month, $500 a month, $1,000 a month. Great cash flow. And if your plan isn't to try to get that uptick, if you just want to hang on to it, well, you know you've got at least a 10-year ride with the builder's warranty, which ain't too bad. So, that's deals in Edmonton. Adrian, give us away from the back. Adrian is part of the Mogul team. He's here to talk deals all night long. I'm here to talk deals all night long. We now have your contact information. We'll fire you off every single one of those properties so that you can peruse them. We are going to keep in touch. And I just want to give another huge thanks to Mr. Kyle Green for coming and talking to us about financing strategies. I want to give a huge thanks to Mr. Ralph Case for coming and talking to us about his story and how to identify a market. And I just want to say a big thanks to all you guys for coming out on a Wednesday night. I know there's a lot of fun things to do, but if hearing about real estate is fun for me, well, I'm glad it's fun for you too. So thanks to you all for coming out. I'm going to hand it over to Ralph to conclude and talk just a little bit more about that bus tour. And then we've got this room late. Stay and network. That's what we're here for. Thanks, everybody.